Okay, good evening everyone. First of all, I want to thank you all for the organization, and I want to thank everybody for your patience with the changes of schedule. Sorry about that, I hope it didn't cause any issues with anybody. So, basically a very simple shiur today, nothing, nothing mystical really. I just want to clarify a little bit this whole inyan, this whole period that we're in, this Sefirat Haomer, counting on the Omer, what it is, why it is, a little bit in halakha, a little bit of hashkafa, a little bit of outlook, of understanding what this period is about, what is expected from us. I know there's a lot of confusion about different customs also related to Sefirat Haomer. So I hope that Bezrat Hashem this will help us put everything in the right place, in the right order, at the right time. And I think this is also a very good example of how everything in the Torah has many levels to it. It says that the Torah has 4 levels: Pshat, Remez, Drash, and Sod. Yeah, you were talking about earlier, there's a simple level, translation of the words. There's the remez, there's the little signs, numerical values, the reason why one letter is here, another letter is there. The drashot, the deep ideas that were actually communicated Baal Peh, they're communicated orally from God to Moses and passed on from generation to generation, which are hinted in the Torah. The Sod, the Sodot HaKabbalah, the Pnimiut Torah. So you can very much see this in the Sefirat Haomer. There is one very seemingly quite a simple matter in the Torah, which we'll see is actually has a lot of depth. And I think it's important at this stage also to understand, sometimes you have a concept that you don't find clearly in the Torah. And you find a little bit more about it in the Tanakh, a little bit more about the Talmud, a little bit more about the Kabbalah. And sometimes people wonder, okay, so what does it mean? Somebody later made it up? Chas v'shalom, nobody made it up. But different dorot, different generations, they did a different taste of the Torah. Very, very important to understand. I mean, the Torah is the same Torah. But the way you teach Torah, what do you emphasize? How do you emphasize? How do you translate it to the generation and to the place and time where you are? That will change very, very much. I'll give you another example. I'll talk a bit in the air here before we get into the point, but I just thought these are important matters to clarify. If you look at Sifrei Musar, books of Jewish ethics, anything that's more than 200 years old, you'll be very scared to read them. A lot about punishment, and Gehinam, and demanding extremely hard things, and encouraging fasting a lot. You read a book, any of the Sfarim written in the last 100 years, much more about how the study of Torah is greater than fasting, how you have to appreciate every mitzvah you've done, and how amazing you are. Why? Because is this false and this is right? It's not that this is right and this is wrong. It means different generation, they respond to different things. In our generation, there's a big problem of depression. A lot of people are feeling low. We all hear people are feeling down. So if you talk a lot about how you can be punished, how careful you have to be, people are very sensitive and they become depressed, right? It doesn't encourage them to try harder. It discourages them from trying at all. And in the olden days, people were tougher. Life was tougher. It was a different way of life. So it's something to keep in mind whenever you study. Anyways, what's Sefirat Haomer in the Torah? In the Torah, it's actually a very simple thing. We're going to read about it not this week's parasha, but next week's parasha. It goes through all the Chagim there in Parashat Emor, to all in Sefer Vayikra, in the 3rd book in the Torah. It goes through all the Yamim Tovim, all the Jewish festivals. And it says, after the festival of Pesach, Daber b'nei Israel, כי תבואו אל הארץ, when you come to land of Israel, וקצרתם מקצירה, והבאתם את עומר ראשית קצירכם אל הכהן. You will come to land, you will cut, you will harvest the Omer, which is about 1.5 kilos, a certain amount of grain. The first Omer, you can bring it to the Kohen. And if את האומר לפני Hashem, they would wave it in front of God in the Bet HaMikdash. ממחרת HaShabbat, the day after the resting day, which Oral Torah explains is the second day of Pesach. This was one of the big machlokot, one big arguments, the Tzedukim, who did not accept the Torah shebichtav, sorry, the Torah shebal peh, didn't accept the Oral Torah. They wanted to explain it literally, to mean the day after Shabbat, which means Sunday. And it was one of the big arguments, because we know from the oral tradition it doesn't mean Sunday. You cannot know which Sunday. It means the day which is like Shabbat, which is the first day of Pesach, the day after that. And they would bring this Omer, they would bring an offering of barley, because that's when the barley crop was ready. Okay? And by the way, interesting, there's a halachic significance to this sacrifice, because only after this sacrifice of grain had been brought, only after that were you allowed to eat from the new produce. There's something called chadash. Yeah? Grain on which you haven't yet brought the sacrifice is chadash. You're not meant to eat it yet. Only after the sacrifice was brought, bring this first bundle of barley, after that you could eat grain. By the way, interesting, this halakha still applies today. Even though we don't have the sacrifice, don't have this korban, there is something called chadash, right? And you will find, if you look at certain kashrut stamps, it will say there is no problem of chadash. What's the mean? Any grain that grew from the new produce this year, only after the first day of Pesach comes, the second day of Pesach has ended, then you can allowed to eat it. So, what could happen? For example, if somebody harvests grain in June, you have to wait till the next Pesach for it to become mutar, right? So there's a lot of, some say it only applies in the land of Israel, some people say it applies even in the diaspora. Nowadays it's a big safek, you don't always know where the grain comes from. Often even the companies themselves don't know. I once asked them, don't even know themselves if the grain was, because the silos are massive, they can store grain for years, so then usually it's not a problem, but sometimes they might use fresh grain. So most communities in the diaspora rely on the opinion that says it only applies in Chutz La'aretz. But in Israel, it's one of the big jobs of the Mashgiach to find out if the grain is fresh grain from this year, then it has to be after Pesach, right? If it's been harvested after Pesach, then you have to wait till the Pesach the following year to use it. Okay, but that was part of the agriculture, something very important in their days. They would bring the korban of barley, and then וספרתם לכם אחורת השבת, יאמר לכם דבר תקופה, 7 שבתות תלמוד תהיינה. From the day of Sefirat Haomer, from the day of bringing the korban Haomer, you would count 7 weeks, 49 days, and then on the 50th day you would bring a korban of wheat. And that day you're not allowed to work, and that's the day we call Chag HaShavuot, the festival of weeks. Because the festival comes at the end of 49 days, at the end of 7 weeks. Very, very easy, yes?
Wasn't there also like this opinion that it only applies to grain that was either from a field that's owned by a Jew or operated by a Jew, or if the field is in Israel, but then if it's like both, if it's owned by a non-Jew outside of Israel, then it doesn't apply. I read this somewhere, but I don't remember.
Yeah, I not be expert on Chadash, to tell you the truth. Usually most communities rely on this opinion that it's not such a problem in the diaspora, but it could be also depends on the ownership. Sure. Okay, good point. But we count the Omer. So counting the Omer, as you also we count the Omer, we don't even know what we're talking about. You're counting a certain amount of days and starting from the Omer, starting from bringing this. Omer is a measurement, 1.5 kilos, 1.4 kilos. We count from this from bringing that 7 weeks. until Chag Shavuot, you bring the wheat was ready, and you would bring a sacrifice of wheat, known as the Shtei Halechem, the 2 loaves of bread. That's it. So, at its surface, it's an agricultural holiday or period of counting from between 2 grains, barley and wheat. That's what the Torah tells us. Very interesting. Shavuot is the only Chag where the Torah does not tell us which day of the month it is. All the other Chagim, it's written very clearly. The 15th or the 14th of the 14th day of the first month, we bring Pesach offering for 14th of Nisan. In the first day of the 7th month, first day of Tishrei Rosh Hashanah, 10th day of Tishrei Yom Kippur, 15th of Tishrei Sukkot, everything is clear. It doesn't say it. It says start counting, and once you've done 7 weeks, then you get to Shavuot. Very interesting. There was some people here visiting some time ago, and the week, 2 weeks ago, from Australia. And they said they're going to New York. So how do you go to New York? Usually you just fly from Australia to America. It's faster. No, they flew to Hong Kong, and Hong Kong to Helsinki, and Helsinki to New York. Why? It's a very interesting question, halakha. If you go from Australia to America, what happens? You gain a day, right? You skip a day. Now, if you're in the middle of Sefirat Haomer, which day do you count? Because Sefirat Haomer, you have to count day after day after day after day, right? Mm-hmm. So if you skip a day, maybe you're 1 day behind. And if that's so maybe you have to keep Shavuot 1 day later than everybody else. Because Shavuot is not dependent on the date in the calendar. I'll tell you more than that. In the times of the Tanakh, it didn't always fall on the 6th of Sivan. Because the Beit Din decided every year, based on seeing the moon, whether it would be 29 days or 30 days. So it could have fallen on the 7th of Sivan. It wasn't, it's not a clear thing. So Shavuot is a very interesting Chag. Of course, we all keep the 6th of Sivan, but at its basis, it's not actually related to the 6th of Sivan. It's related to the fact that it has to be 7 weeks starting from Pesach. To the extent that the Ramban, one of our great commentators, said the whole Sefirat Haomer is some sort of Chol HaMoed. It doesn't really mean Chol HaMoed. You're allowed to work normally. But it means really Pesach is not over at some level. Because, and it's very interesting, the Talmud never uses the word Shavuot. The Talmud calls this the day of Shavuot Atzeret. Which other Chag we have that's called Atzeret? Shmini Atzeret, end of Sukkot. So actually the Chachamim are saying Shavuot is the end of Pesach. Very interesting to keep this in mind. Okay, but that's the pashut of the Torah on a simple level. It's just a question of counting from one place to another. Now, what do we achieve with this counting? What are we trying to do? Seems to be counting from 2 agricultural events from one to another. Now, it's very interesting. If you look in the Torah, and getting back to what I was saying, there's nothing new. Nobody ever invented anything new. But if you look carefully at the Torah, you look at Parashat Yitro, go back to the 2nd book, to Exodus. There you see, when did they arrive at Har Sinai, to Mount Sinai? It says in the Torah, בחודש השלישי, לצאת בני ישראל מארץ מצרים, ביום הזה באו מדבר סיני. In the 3rd month of the Jews leaving from Egypt, they arrived to the desert of Sinai. Right? Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you. What's the 3rd month? Nisan is the 1st, Iyar 2nd, Sivan. So, they arrived Rosh Chodesh Sivan, we say they rested there, that's the 1st day. Then Moshe went to God. Then he said, sanctify yourself for 3 days. And you count. Turns out the Torah was given on the 6th of Sivan, which is Shavuot. But the Torah here, it's like, you can deduce it if you study it, but it doesn't not mention. Whenever the Torah speaks about Shavuot in the list of the Chagim, it just talks about agriculture. It doesn't say anything about celebrating the Torah. So it's very interesting. It's very hidden, this whole part about the connection between the Torah and Shavuot. And actually, the Rishonim said, Sefirat Haomer, he says this idea, that we're actually counting in anticipation for the receiving of the Torah. We are so excited about Matan Torah, we're counting days towards it. Yeah, like use example now, many people have countdowns. You are very excited about something, you count days towards it. So this is already a different level, a deeper level of what's going on. Yeah? There is the avodah, the service of the fields and the agriculture. Then there's this avodah of waiting for the giving of the Torah. Now, interesting. As we said, the Torah is all about agriculture. Once we didn't have the Beit HaMikdash, we didn't have these sacrifices, there's no need to count anything. The Chachamim instituted that we should continue Sefirat Haomer, even though we don't have the Beit HaMikdash, and we pray. Many people have a tradition at the end of Sefirat Haomer, they say, May Hashem rebuild the Beit HaMikdash, bring the avodah back to the Beit HaMikdash, so you can do the Sefirat Haomer properly with the sacrifices. We're counting numbers, we're not actually doing what Omer is. We use the word Omer, but we haven't got the Omer. Okay. So let's understand a few basic halachot of counting the Omer. What do you have to do? It's very simple, really. After every day, from Pesach till Shavuot, starting from the second night of Seder, you count the Omer after it gets dark. Yeah? So even if you pray Ma'ariv early, which is very common now in the summer, Sefirat Haomer, you wait till dark and you say it together with the Shema, because anyways you have to repeat the Shema. Count the Omer. You should count the Omer standing, because it says, Me'achel chermesh bakama. You will start counting from the day when they used to cut with the sickle, the knife, the special thing they cut the grain, the kama, the standing grain. I say, Al tikra bakama ela bakoma. You don't understand, you should stand yourself when you count the Omer. Stand up, make the bracha, and you say the amount of days and the amount of weeks. Just like it says in the Siddur. Because that's what it says in the Torah, right? You count 7 weeks and 49 days. So you always say the amount of days, the amount of weeks. And many Siddurim add all sorts of prayers. According to Kabbalah, it's a very, very special moment. Because the preparation for the Torah is a service. It's a lot to you. You're going to receive the Torah, you have to be ready for it. It says in the Talmud, Derech Eretz Kadma LaTorah. Knowing how to live properly, being a good person, comes before the Torah. You have to have the right midot, you have the right character traits. You have to calm down your anger. You have to build up on loving your fellow. You have to be a person who can accept the Torah. And only then you can come to Torah. So that's why a lot of these ideas have been put around the Sefirah. Sometimes you notice people will say, what day of the Omer is it today? Oh, yesterday was 24. Yesterday was 20. What is that about? Halacha is like this. Sefirat Haomer, the moment you say today is this, this, and this, the mitzvah is done. If you've done the mitzvah. You can't say a blessing anymore. Right? Because if you say a blessing, because if you've done the mitzvah, it's too late. The blessing is just before you do the mitzvah. That's very often people will say, sometimes it's dark. What is it again? Which number? Oh, yesterday was this. So you haven't said it. Once you say today is this and this, you've counted. Yes, sir.
What if someone does it like while sitting down?
It's still done with this. Still yours.
Okay.
בעצמו. צריך לספור מעומד. I don't think it's... even if you start it, you are יוצא למצווה.
Okay.
Right. Right. Now, if you missed, very common problem here, the night is very short, and it's very late, and you slept, you didn't hear your alarm clock, whatever it is, and it's already morning. So what's the halacha? So it's okay, you've lost half of the day really, because in the Judaism, the day starts from night. But no problem, you're still in the middle of the day. So the halacha is like this, because it's a question, can you count a day or not? It's a general rule in halacha, safek berachot lehakel. If you're not sure, say the bracha. Don't say the bracha. Don't take any risks to say God's name in vain. So if you didn't count in the night, count during the day without the bracha. Many synagogues actually have a custom. The chazan always in shacharit, he always says that the amount of the Omer. He counts it there without the bracha, of course. If somebody forgot last night, at least he'll say it there and he'll have done the mitzvah. Now, if you missed the night and the day, you missed the whole day, 25 hours. Now what? Very, very interesting halakha. So let's try to understand. What is the mitzvah of counting? Usually, if you do a mitzvah, then a mitzvah. Yeah? You put on the tefillin of the hand, put on the tefillin of the head, 2 mitzvot. You didn't put on the head, you put on the hand, you've done something. Counting is a bit different. If I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, is that counting? It's not really counting because I've skipped 2 numbers, so the counting doesn't mean anything anymore. So there's an opinion in halakha that says that if you missed a day, you've lost the mitzvah because there's no counting. Well, what are you counting now? You've lost a number from the counting. Others say no. There's one big mitzvah called Sefirat Haomer. Each day is a mitzvah of its own. So the halakha is like this. Because it's a machloket. Again, you missed the whole day. From now on, continue counting. Just count without the bracha.
What if it's Shabbat and you forgot which day it is and you cannot check from it?
Okay? Okay, so I'll tell you a way that you'll remember it. I'll help you. Always, the first night of the Seder, if you remember what day of the week that was, then you will know that was a full week, right? Because the second night of the Seder, you start counting. So like this year, Sunday night was the first night. Maybe the following Saturday night, we counted 1 week. Saturday night after that, 2 weeks. And another 3 weeks. And another 5 weeks. So if you have an idea whereabouts we are, then you can count from the last full week and you'll find the right day. Does that make sense? Hopefully you still remember when did you celebrate Pesach? The week afterwards.
Also apps and stuff like that to...
No.
Yeah, but he's saying on Shabbat, that's his question. How do you remember on Shabbat? Good idea, have a calendar. Yeah, no, it's a problem. People get so used to the digital stuff that then they don't have a solution. We have that with your watch. Sometimes it means you don't have a watch, you don't have a clock. We're used to everything on the phone, and then you don't know what the time is, It's a problem. So it's good to have something that's not electronic at home. Okay. That's the mitzvah of Sefirat Haomer in a nutshell. Again, when people ask, do women need to count? So of course they don't need to. Mitzvah is a shazman grama. Every mitzvah which is time related, women are exempt. To what? Can women count? They can, of course, can count. You're allowed to count. Any mitzvah, pretty much any mitzvah, which is not compulsory, you can still do it on a voluntary basis. Whether you make a bracha or not, there are different opinions. Beniard by Ashkenazim is that women make a bracha even on a mitzvah which are not obligated. Now the Sfaradim is that they do not make a bracha. There is some idea in Kabbalah, I don't know what the reason for it is, but I know that the Kabbalists say an idea that specifically Sefirat Haomer, there's some reason for women specifically not to count.
It's like masculine and like some type of spiritual.
Some sort of spiritual idea, I don't know why. But on a simple level of halachot, if a woman wants to count, she can count. Just different customs whether to make the bracha. Okay. So really Sefirat Haomer is a very simple mitzvah. So now, many of you may be asking, so what is all this minhagim around it? Not cutting the beard and the hair and the music and not making weddings. How does this all fit in? So you should know, this has nothing to do with the Torah, and it's also not written in the Talmud. Adrabah, exactly the opposite. Everything we've said so far about the Sefirat Haomer is an extremely happy time. It's an exciting connection. You're still, in some ways, you're still continuing the holiness of Pesach and the happiness of Pesach. So really it should be a very happy time. So now what is this whole customs of mourning? What are they and where do they come from? So the Talmud says in one line, in one place, don't remember the exact place, all it says is, in one place, that the place here, I'll see, doesn't bring, I don't have the exact place, but it's brought down in the Gemara that the Talmidim, the students of Rabbi Akiva, died between Pesach and Shavuot. 24,000, he had a big yeshiva, 24,000 students, and all of them died, askara, diphtheria, a terrible epidemic, during this time, between Pesach and Shavuot. Talmud doesn't mention the customs related, it just says that's what happened, historical event. Obviously very sad. You have to remember Rabbi Akiva did not know anything about Torah until he was 40. It took him 24 years to become the great Rabbi Akiva, that we say even Moses looked in the future and saw that why are you giving the Torah to me when you have somebody like him? So you can imagine somebody, he's 64-year-old, the last 24 years, he's changed his life all around, he's become the biggest Rosh Yeshiva, and then boom, the whole Yeshiva dies, everybody dead. So obviously, a very sad thing. And we find, 600-700 years later, in the writings of the Geonim, a custom not to make weddings during that time. It's very interesting because there's been lots of terrible things in Jewish history. And if you want to make for every time something bad happened a day of mourning, then you wouldn't stop because there's been, unfortunately, a lot of these days. So it's interesting. It's also interesting, somebody was pointing me out, I was listening to a shiur, why, if this was really about being sad about Rabbi Akiva, why did it come hundreds of years later, this custom? The Talmud doesn't say anything about this. And also, not getting married is interesting because really, getting married is a very, very big mitzvah. Usually we never push off wedding. We try to, if a couple get engaged, we encourage them to get married as soon as possible. It's not a good thing to push off a wedding. So it seems to be, it was more the idea that because a bad thing happened, it's not, mazal is not so good. It's not the best time. So this custom came to be. Because you can get married earlier, you can get married later. So that specific time was not considered the right time. Then, a little bit later, a few hundred years later again, it's all brought down in Shulchan Aruch, we find another custom not to have a haircut. Hair, not to have it. Which is again a custom borrowed from the laws of mourning, because somebody who's in the month of mourning, he doesn't cut his beard or his hair. So that's brought down as well. Some say actually that this custom became stronger in the times of the Crusades, because the Crusaders in the medieval times, they went in the summer when it wasn't as cold, they started traveling and they would go from town to town, they would kill Jews. So some say that also affected. Very interesting custom in Nusach Ashkenazi in our community. In the prayers we say on Shabbat, every Shabbat we say one prayer, Avarachamim, to pray for the souls of the people who died al Kiddush Hashem, killed because they kept their religion, didn't want to convert to Christianity. And it's very interesting. During the year, all sorts of reasons why we skip it. If it's a Brit Milah, if it's Rosh Chodesh, but when it's between Pesach and Shavuot, we never skip it. We always say it. That seems to have been the most intensive time of the Crusades. So, this is the idea. If we go back to Rabbi Akiva for a second, something very important to understand. Right? And nowadays, we learn a lot from books, right? But that was not the case in times of Rabbi Akiva. In times of Rabbi Akiva, it was oral Torah. It's only Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, three generations later, that the Mishnah was written down. So we talk 24,000 Talmidei Chachamim dying. We're not only mourning them, it means we lost so much Torah. And it says that then immediately Rabbi Akiva found another 4 or 5 students, and from then the Torah continued, but so much was lost. We don't even have an idea of the greatness and the wisdom of Torah, which we don't have. So that's one explanation, one idea. Now, when do the laws of mourning apply? It's brought down in the Midrash at Pros HaAtzeret. The 2 weeks before Shavuot, it stopped, this epidemic. And that's where comes this day of Lag BaOmer, which we're going to have in a week and a half from now. Lag BaOmer just means Lag, Lamed Gimel, 33rd day of the Omer. Well done, that's the day the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying. So, interesting that different interpretations and different customs. I think the most common custom is from Pesach till Lag BaOmer, we keep these customs of mourning. But there are communities that do otherwise. They don't keep any customs of mourning until Rosh Chodesh Iyar. And from Rosh Chodesh Iyar, they keep until 3 days before Shavuot. Because some say for 33 days later, earlier, it's not clear. So different communities, different customs. They're all correct, just as long as you keep one of them always. Many people don't listen to music. It's brought down in the Achronim, again, dancing, music. But if there's a mitzvah, if there's a bar mitzvah, there's a brit milah, if somebody is depressed, whatever it is, it's difficult to manage without music, it's not so strict. And one should know, this is not a clear time of mourning. In the 3 weeks, which are brought down in the summer, when you're born from Bet HaMikdash, that's really something that the Chachamim instituted. Sefirat Haomer was never meant to be a sad time. But we see some sort of custom that developed, and we try to keep it as much as possible. The last thing, again, like we said, we just keep going deeper, but actually everything is connected, because Lag BaOmer, the Torah got a chance to continue. And then 2 weeks later, we celebrate Shavuot when the Torah was given. So all of this is really very interconnected, very intertwined. We are waiting for the Matan Torah. We're mourning for the loss of Torah. We're celebrating the continuation of the Torah. So it's not a coincidence. Hashem has made these different things happen at the same time. Lag BaOmer, simply, all it says in Shulchan Aruch is the day when the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying. So then we put on music again, weddings again. But the Kabbalah, the Zohar, says something else. Zohar says that the day of Lag BaOmer is Hilula de Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. It's the Yotza, the Askara, the day when one of those 5 students mentioned that Rabbi Akiva rebuilt the yeshiva with, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, he died on Lag BaOmer. And it's very interesting. If you open Masechet Shabbat, Tractate Shabbat in Talmud. You open page 33, 33 like life. There's the whole story of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. The whole story of his life, how he criticized the Romans, he had to hide in a cave, and he studied Torah for 13 years, and he came out and he wanted to burn the world because he couldn't understand how is anybody wasting their time when you can study Torah, and he went back to the cave for a year, and he came out again, and then he had a more positive outlook on the world. And that's why Lag BaOmer has this, so to say, third dimension of a new dimension, which is the dimension of celebrating the Kabbalah, celebrating the Zohar, people going to Meron, to the grave of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and praying to Hashem. So these are this is like another idea which is brought down concerning the Omer, concerning Lag BaOmer. To wrap it up, I think what's important for us in this time is to think about, first of all, what is my connection to Torah? In terms of studying the Torah, in terms, of course, this is an amazing thing to have something like this, Erev Kolel, to people come and study Torah. That's very, very much something that's connected to the Sefirat Haomer. But also time to think, am I living the Torah? Am I a respectable vessel, a kli kibul for the Torah? Yeah, am I Rabbi Akiva? Interesting. You know what the Talmud says? Why the students of Rabbi Akiva died? Lo nagu kavod ze baze. They didn't honor each other enough. Now it's very interesting this because Rabbi Akiva was the rabbi who said, love your fellow as yourself. Ze klal gadol b'Torah. Ve'ahavta l'reach kamoa, ze klal gadol b'Torah. Love your fellow as yourself. That's the main point in the Torah. It's very interesting that his own students seem to have been lacking in that. And it's a mistake we often make, I think, because of course we cannot compare ourselves to his students, but sometimes you're very interested in your own understanding, your own interpretation of Torah. But the kavod, the respect, means you have to listen to the other side. You have to listen to what the other person has to say. And that's what's going to bring you to the Torah. Because the Torah has shivim panim. It's got different ways to look at it. As we saw today, so many different aspects to the Omer. So be ready to understand and respect what the other person is trying to say, and see his understanding of the Torah. So anyways, Hashem should help us to prepare us in the correct way to Kabbalat the Torah, and Bezrat Hashem, I'll see you all on the Leil Shavuot studying Torah together.